So about 3 years ago, I made a video where I reviewed Sonic Mega Drive. That video was like 30 minutes and I go over pretty much every single part of the comic, giving a more overall review. It led a lot of people to just saying that I was nitpicking, and due to the inherent structure of the review, it really couldn't be avoided. But I pretty much learned that people only care about nitpicks if it's something negative about something that they like. Like if I had said, oh I really like the grass in this one panel, I don't think anyone would have complained about that. It just feels like they're using the nitpicks to complain about my review without saying anything addressing my more critical points, seemingly making their complaint about nitpicking a nitpick in and of itself about my review. And overall, while people were understanding of my opinions of the comic, others not so much. 5 years ago, I used to actually really like Sonic Mega Drive. However, as time goes on, I realized that it's actually not as good as I originally thought. So this video will be a re-review of the series. I also want to thank everyone for criticizing my takes on the comic. Because of you, I was able to hold my ground and realize I am in no way wrong for feeling the way that I feel about this comic. That's right, you guys were complaining about my takes on the comic and I didn't yield. I was able to stand my point and realize my points are stronger than yours. Sorry about that. In actuality, I want to make this video a more well-rounded and straight to the point review, and hopefully less cringy. Well, kinda. Anyways, Sonic Mega Drive starts with Sonic finding a giant crab meat who has apparently captured Tails. Tails tells Sonic about the crab's weak spot, and Sonic says, oh, he made a meme reference. Listen, this is something that not many people talked about in the original comments in my video, but I want to know what you guys think. Personally, I feel like classic Sonic is from a time where mentioning memes wasn't really much of a thing that Sonic did. Sure, he does it nowadays. Classic Sonic's supposed to feel somewhat timeless in my opinion. And come on, this meme will eventually die out anyways. Oh my god. Well, I mean, at least modern Sonic is saying it. Let it be known that this meme was written by the exact same writer twice. Also, let it be known that they actually made a Frozen reference in this comic. Like, really? Frozen? I don't mind references that are self-contained, like the Ant Knuckles meme, which even spawned a really cool gameplay mode in Sonic Mania. But going more broad with it doesn't really feel that good in my opinion. But again, let me know what you think in the comment section down below about memes being in classic Sonic. But going back to the story, Sonic saves Tails and we eventually get the plot of the comic. It appears that Eggman is using the 7 HE gears to power his new super weapon, the Mega Drive. It's a pretty basic classic story, better than Superstars, but my main problem isn't the story, it's actually the characters. As a story can be good or bad, but the characters can make up for it. And with that being in mind, let's move on to our next character being Amy. And you can see her very debut in this comic is her cowering in fear when facing a He-Ho lookalike. Oh boy, let me get into something right here. Amy was done dirty in this comic. Amy is written poorly and inconsistently throughout all of it. Let me go over everything. But before I do, I want you to know that I am a fan of Amy, and the complaints that I have are because I don't think she was done justice in this comic. Amy's debut in this comic is her cowering in fear. She has a hammer, she knows how to use it, and the writer thought it would be a good idea to make our introduction her cowering in fear in front of a super badnik asking for it to go away. Now you could say that that was her trying to lure Sonic to save her, but again, for the reader's perspective of seeing Amy like this for the first time, and not only that, but this also being Sonic's introduction as well, is bad on both ends. Because not only do we have a bad perception of Amy, but Sonic doesn't want to let her tag along anyway. But it doesn't end there. After Sonic saves Amy, she starts whining to Sonic about letting her join the team. And you know what she says to try to compel Sonic? She says, I'm not helpless like I was back then. Please let me come too. What? Were you not just screaming for help? She did a horrible job at portraying that she wasn't helpless. What they should have done was have a bunch of badniks scattered throughout the floor, with Sonic and Tails hearing a loud banging sound. They could have had Amy launch into a battle with the super badnik, and then Sonic and Tails surprise the super badnik and help Amy out. That way I could portray her as being somewhat useful, but instead they decided to write her being useless. I could actually see Amy destroying a bunch of badniks in almost a fit of rage, seeing as how her fiery passion for Sonic is what helps give her strength, so she could be doing this while looking for Sonic, claiming that nothing would ever get in her way. Personally, I could see this happening, and it makes her a much better introduction. But that's far from the only problem with Amy in this comic. Not only does she fail to make a good first impression, she also has a bad reason for tagging along. When she's whining to Sonic, Sonic actually ends up running to a spike and dropping all of his rings. Amy grabs exactly one ring and says that she can pick up any rings that Sonic leaves behind. And despite the fact that that's something that Tails can already do, she says that that's one of the reasons she should be able to tag along, even though it was her whining that got Sonic hit in the first place. Even worse is that she says she can get rid of the spikes that are in Sonic's way, even though earlier in the comic, Sonic and Tails were able to traverse those spikes with no problem at all. And again, Amy's the only reason Sonic hit those spikes at all. Also, for those who are going to bring up the Cascade Temple Zone, Amy doesn't really save Tails there either. Sure, she breaks spikes off of the wall, but from what we can see illustrated, Tails was never going to land on those spikes. He landed in between them. If they had made it so he landed on one of the broken spikes, that would be a pretty fair argument as to why she should have tagged along. And for those saying that that was the intended purpose and that it wasn't illustrated well, like I said, Amy was done dirty in this comic, and apparently she's now being done dirty not only by the writer, but the artist as well. And you know what makes things even worse? Sonic has no faith in her. And I mean, to be fair, neither do I, but the only reason he lets Amy tag along is to make sure that she doesn't get kidnapped again. Spoiler alert, she gets kidnapped again. I wouldn't blame Sonic for never letting Amy tag along again. But who am I kidding? Amy could do less than the bare minimum and everyone will still love her for it. How do I put this in the nicest and harshest way possible? If you never existed, nothing in this comic would change. I can't think of any point in this comic where she's actually useful. Like if she had genuinely saved Tails' life, then there would be an argument. But again, as I've already demonstrated, that was never the case. And guess what? If she never existed, Sonic would have never gotten hurt, both physically and emotionally. After everyone is assembled, they all start to destroy the bosses very quickly, so Sonic never gets any time to shine and it ends up hurting his feelings. But again, if Amy wasn't here, Sonic probably would have gotten a good shot or two and wouldn't have distanced himself from the group. So again, Amy, if you were removed, nothing would change in this comic. Furthermore, Amy's the reason that Eggman got the last ancient gear. So again, Amy, you are completely useless. Moving on, I did also mention that Amy was written inconsistently. When Amy gets captured by Eggman, she says her hammer can't break the glass. And there are two problems with this. One, why did they have to write it like this? Like you had to tell the readers rather than just having her hammer be placed somewhere in any other panel, that way we would know she doesn't have it, therefore she can't break out of the glass. Two, Sonic's spin dash is able to break through the glass twice. Once while breaking in, then he grabbed her, then was still able to break through the other end. Like, did your hammer just stop doing what it was supposed to do? Like, why didn't they just make it so Sonic was losing to Metal Sonic, and then Amy uses her fiery passion for Sonic to finally be able to break the glass, and then deliver the final blow to Metal Sonic? This could actually work in two ways. One, it could make it so she got over her fear of Metal Sonic. But again, it would also make sense for her fiery passion for Sonic being the reason she broke out, and why she wasn't able to do it earlier because Sonic wasn't there and she felt scared and alone. And another inconsistency for Amy is that she was able to analyze and one-shot a mini-boss. At the very start of the comic, she was doing very poorly. She was cowering in the face of the He-Ho lookalike, and in addition, she didn't do anything against the first Eggman boss either. Matter of fact, she seemed pretty nervous. So to have her go from that to destroying a boss in a single hit that she analyzed by herself is pretty much out of character. Rather than having Tails be the smart one who's supposed to dissect and understand how bosses work, Amy pretty much takes that role away from Tails. And every other time Tails does this, by the way, it does not work out. Tails is not smart in this comic. Like in Glitter Peak Zone, his advice to defeat the Eggman snowman boss was to hit the snowman on the bottom. Like if Tails had just said, attack the snowman, what would have changed? Either one, you attack the bottom like you're supposed to, or two, you attack where Eggman is, and then guess what? The boss would have been defeated even faster. This advice changes nothing. If Tails had said nothing, nothing was gonna change. Tails, you were not smart with it in this comic. And don't even get me started about the Eruption Ruin Zone. That was a dumb plan that was executed horribly because of the way it was portrayed. You know what? We're obviously not talking about Amy. Now it's time to talk about Tails. Another thing that I feel that Tails said that was wrong is that both Metal Sonic and the Eggmobile have short-range flight capability. The Eggmobile is Eggman's main form of transportation. I don't think he's going to cheap out on the mileage. For example, Eggman always flies in his Eggmobile. Even when it's damaged, he can get pretty far, and always manages to get away from Sonic. I can't imagine in any world where this is his main machine that it would be short-ranged. And in Sonic 4 Episode Metal, we see Metal Sonic fly all the way from Little Planet all the way to Eggman's lair to get repaired, and this is when he was damaged. And in case you don't want to say that's canon or whatever, Metal Sonic is supposed to be on par with Sonic. He can fly at the speed of sound. In addition, he can also overclock his systems and still be able to move afterwards. I can't imagine any world where he is supposed to rival Sonic, who can go all the way around the world, and yet Metal Sonic is supposed to be the one with short-range flight capability. Either way you look at it, I don't think this is very smart, but of course Sonic is gonna praise it, because of course why not? Oh, and don't say that doesn't matter because Tails at least told them where Eggman's base is. They have the very last ancient gear. If they couldn't find Eggman, Eggman was gonna find them. And due to the confrontation, it seems like Eggman did want them to find him. He has a monitor in a room, he made a list of demands, he has Metal Sonic standing in the center of the room ready to fight, and even has Amy hanging from the ceiling. Trust me, Eggman was gonna turn his whole flying fortress around if he had to. You and I both know Eggman likes being extra. If Eggman wanted to build the Mega Drive with 6 ancient gears only, he would have done it before Sonic showed up. Now this version of Tails is gotta be the most F-tier psychic I've ever seen. When the comic starts, he's already captured. Like Amy, are Sonic and Knuckles the only capable members in this entire group? Well, according to this panel, apparently yes. In the Green Seaside Zone, once Tails tells Sonic how to defeat the boss, he falls from grace from there and does nothing pretty much useful at all with his intelligence. Because once he's saved, he tells Sonic about the ancient gears. And that's good and all, that's something he should be doing. However, it's pretty much rendered useless, as Eggman says the same thing later on, when Sonic overhears his conversation, essentially making the previous dialogue useless, as all it does is relay information that we already knew. Speaking of which, we never actually get told that there were 7 ancient gears. Neither Tails or Eggman relay this specific information, despite the fact that it's information that they know and is key later on. I know you could probably say this is somewhat of a nitpick, but I do think Tails should have specified the amount of ancient gears that there actually were, because I think it could have been written pretty clever, but I'll talk more about that when I get to Eggman. But going back to Tails, he lost to a mini-boss when he actually has experience, despite the fact that later on, from what we're seeing, Amy not only has the brains, but the power to defeat that exact mini-boss that Tails lost to. You could say that Tails is rusty, but he should still have more experience than Amy. And you know what? Tails is literally slacking in this comic. He even needs Sonic to spell out exactly what Tails needs to do to help him defeat the boss. Isn't Tails supposed to be one step ahead of the game? Yet he's being portrayed dumb here and needs to be told what to do. Furthermore, this man does not like Sonic. He's over here teasing Sonic about Amy being his girlfriend, and just look at his face. Okay, he knows what he's doing. In addition, he even makes remarks about Sonic's weight, telling him that he needs to lay off the chili dogs. Whose man's is this? This is not the classic Tails that I know. The Tails that I know loves and admires Sonic. In issue 289, we see that Tails is very excited to join Sonic on his adventures, and even asks Sonic for approval to join him on his adventures. But in this one, Tails doesn't really seem to admire Sonic that much, only giving us like one scene ever where he actually treats Sonic like the hero he thinks he is. And if you would allow me to go on a bit of a side tangent here, Tails seems to like Amy a lot more in this comic. Despite Amy's total lack of courage, Tails goes against Sonic's wishes of not letting Amy join along. Which again, in the original series, we do not see him do this. He's very much on board with whatever Sonic wants. And the fact that he didn't want Amy to tag along, and furthermore she got kidnapped, I think Sonic was actually right, showing that Tails probably shouldn't be doubting him. Because again, Sonic's his hero, his older brother, yet Tails is going against what Sonic is saying. When Amy grabs a single ring that Sonic dropped, Tails is actually looking in awe. And then when Amy uses her hammer to crush the spikes, even though it was useless as Tails and Sonic were able to traverse those spikes before, he looks extremely amazed and he's begging for Amy to tag along at this point. Furthermore, he now wants Amy to tell him about the stories of her and Sonic. He's admiring Amy for being able to dissect and defeat a mini-boss all by herself, something that Tails should have been able to do, but apparently he's weaker than Amy now, even though he's more experienced at this point in the story. Tails in this comic seems like he's low-key sick of Sonic, which really shouldn't be the case seeing as how much he looks up to him. Now it's time for us to talk about the main character of the story, Sonic himself. Now I know it's a bit late on in the video for me to talk about Sonic, but Amy and Tails were the ones I want to talk about the most. To put it simply, I don't really like this interpretation of Sonic that much. Sonic in Sonic Mega Drive seems like he's kind of a dork. And no, I don't mean in the good way either. I'm not really saying he's the worst, but I think he's far from the best. This isn't like the version of Sonic where he's overly friendly, and it isn't like the version of Sonic where he's interpreted to be very cool. He seems a lot more moody than his main series counterpart, which didn't even mind having people tag along. He allowed Bunny Rabbit to tag along with him on his adventure despite the fact that she just got out of her wheelchair. Furthermore, when Amy had to tag along at the end of Sonic CD, he actually seemed very happy about it and didn't mind. There's like one scene where Sonic is showing his nicer friendly side, which I do like because it shows a nice interaction between Sonic and Knuckles. I'd say this is one of the only few good Sonic scenes in this comic. Now I do like the story being told about Sonic learning to share the spotlight with his friends, because it's better to share the spotlight with your friends and not play that big of a role, rather than being the center of attention and being all alone. But again, this contradicts what the previous canon depicted. And for those questioning whether Sonic Mega Drive is canon or not, someone on Twitter did ask Ian Flynn if this was canon, or if this was like another place in another time kind of situation. And another place in another time refers to the fact that there are things in the comics that aren't canon. For example, they made one where they were all participating in the Olympics. However, this takes place in another place in another time. It is not canon to the mainline story. And you know what he said? He clarified that it was in fact canon. Significantly standalone, but it is in fact canon. So I don't really know what to think about Sonic and Sonic Mega Drive. While there are many interpretations of Sonic, I don't think I'm very favorable to this one, or even this comic for that matter. Another thing I don't like is his first interaction with Metal Sonic in this comic, where he acts completely useless and does basically nothing. I'd say you could at least give 5 seconds in between everything happening here. So why is Sonic just standing there for 5 whole seconds while Metal Sonic's doing something? Like, at least if Sonic had at least tried swinging at Metal Sonic and then he dodged out of the way, that would at least be fair. But as you can see, Knuckles didn't do anything because he was on the ground. He got swept by Metal Sonic. Tails gets punched in the face, and Amy was frozen in fear. So why was Sonic only doing something the very last second? He's supposed to be the fastest thing alive. You know what, Sonic? You deserve this clip right here.
I'm supposed to be the fastest, but I was too slow to save my buddy.
But don't be fooled, cause while I've been saying a lot of negative things about Sonic Mega Drive, and I'm probably not going to be done with that anyways, there are things in this comic that I actually do like, and one of those things is Knuckles. Well, for the most part at least. The way Knuckles is written in this comic is straight up amazing. I love how when he makes a mistake, he feels the need to correct it, so he sticks along with Sonic rather than seeking revenge by himself, which is something he was previously going to do before he was stopped by Eggman. I'm so glad that he took Sonic up on his offer and decided to join the team. Or his friendly rivalry with Sonic, which is also portrayed amazingly, where he's so smug and full of himself that it gets under Sonic's skin, and Sonic even turns the smugness on him by making it so that Knuckles called himself a doofus, showing that Knuckles isn't the sharpest tool in the shed. I also love when they got to the haunted depth zone and Knuckles is just striding around, not even caring. Just like Pumpkin Hill suggests, he ain't afraid of no ghost. Also, when Knuckles starts talking, I like how Sonic uses Knuckles' words against him so that way he can go off on his own. And only later does it dawn on Knuckles that Sonic was just using him. Like I stated, this version of Knuckles is actually amazing. It is almost perfect. Keyword being almost. There was a pretty big mistake in this comic which I think goes against Knuckles' character, and that's his introduction into this comic. You're telling me after Eggman stole the Master Emerald and was going to conquer the world, you're telling me he just left the Master Emerald with Eggman. And as we're seeing through Knuckles' flashback, he doesn't even seem like he's downing Eggman. He just seems very proud of himself. He basically told him that when Sonic turned super, he basically wouldn't stop rampaging. And by saying that Sonic had eventually gone Fleetway after going super, there are two problems with it. One, Sonic was super at the very beginning of the game and was not rampaging. I know Knuckles had just introduced himself to Sonic, however I do think Knuckles knows that Sonic can control Super Sonic. And going to the ending of Sonic 3 and Knuckles, Sonic is in base form when the Master Emerald was returned to Angel Island, and I'm pretty sure Knuckles would have saw the Master Emerald be returned by them. Furthermore, if you were to go to the and Knuckles story mode, the ending portrays Sonic saving Knuckles and Sonic's in his base form as Knuckles is now returned to Angel Island. Either way you look at it, it seems like Knuckles should know that Sonic can control his super form. After Sonic goes super to stop Eggman, why would an evil Super Sonic return the Master Emerald? I don't think he would even care about that at that point, if we're supposed to believe that he's even somewhat remotely like Fleetway Super Sonic. Overall, I think this is a blunder on the writer's part. I don't think he should have ever trusted Eggman. But again, despite this big flaw, Knuckles was written pretty well regardless. I just wish his origin for being in this comic was different. But no matter what, none can compare to the fact that Metal Sonic is easily the best written character in this entire comic. It seems like it'd be pretty hard to write Metal Sonic bad. Though trust me, Ian Flynn somehow found a way to do that too. But in this comic, he pulled out all the stops. Metal Sonic shows up, takes out all of Sonic's team, and then flies off with the ancient gears. Later on, we see a pretty awesome fight between Sonic and a powered up Metal Sonic. While that fight was still relatively short, it was longer than the other fights in this comic and was actually coordinated pretty well. I also like the ending where Metal Sonic looks at Sonic with a face that says, "I absolutely despise you," and then immediately flies away so that Eggman can get the final ancient gear. Overall, Metal Sonic gets a 10 out of 10 in terms of portrayal in this comic. Moving on to our final character of Sonic Mega Drive, Dr. Eggman himself. And let me start this off by saying, boring. Just boring. Eggman in other forms of media can be a very lovable character, but this version of Eggman, not so much. All he does is show up in his machine made of paper mache, giving a one-liner, getting destroyed in like 1 to 2 hits, and then leaving after saying a one-liner. In the second zone of this very comic, Sonic even points out the formula. He is so boring that after the second encounter in the comic, Sonic's able to tell the future because he's that repetitive. And Eggman's plan for the Mega Drive, while it sounds cool and all, this comic is cancelled, so we never get to see the third part, making this just a Sonic Mega Drive L. Like, what are we supposed to do with an incomplete comic at this point? Eggman basically gets no highlights in this comic then. Now we can move on to Eggman's big plan, on par with Sonic Adventure 2, where he tells them to give him the last ancient gear because he kidnapped Amy. And just like in Sonic Adventure 2, Sonic tries to give him the old slip. But in this case, it's actually really stupid, and it's nowhere near Sonic Adventure 2 level writing. For some reason, Sonic thinks that Eggman thinks there's only 6 ancient gears. Even though, in this story, Knuckles and everyone else knows that there's 7 ancient gears. So why wouldn't Eggman know there's 7 ancient gears? That doesn't make any sense. It's not like Eggman said, "Give me the 6th and final ancient gear." If he had said that, that would have been kind of clever. Or imagine in a world where at the beginning of the comic, Eggman said there was only 6 ancient gears while talking to himself out loud. And the reason he did that was because he knew Sonic was going to overhear him. But no, he never specified that there were 6, they just assumed that. For some reason, despite Eggman having every single ancient gear, and them never beating up to any of them, they think that Eggman doesn't have the final ancient gear. Bro, this is not a Sonic Adventure 2 level plot. Everyone looks stupid here. I'm actually tired of this. Every single character is stupid in this comic. Sonic is stupid for not questioning whether Eggman had the 7th ancient gear or not and just handing it over. Tails is dumb for basically being wrong about everything he's ever said. Amy is dumb for every reason I've already listed and you can see it on screen. Knuckles is dumb for trusting Eggman. And Eggman's dumb because he could conquer the world but lets his ego get in the way. However, there is one character in this comic who is not stupid, and that is Metal Sonic. He played his role perfectly, and he even made sure that Eggman would get the final ancient gear by flying away, literally not letting his ego get in the way, making him the only intelligent being in this entire comic. In conclusion, Sonic Mega Drive to me used to be a 6.5 out of 10, but now I feel after re-reviewing it, it's like an easy 5 out of 10. I'd feel bad for giving it any lower of a score, but I'd also feel bad for giving it any higher of a score. 5 years ago, I used to like Sonic Mega Drive. I used to think this comic was great, but as time goes on, I realize that it's actually not that good. Please consider liking and subscribing, as I may have opened up your third eye as to why this comic may not be as good as we originally thought. And until next time, this is Jules Prime, and I'll hopefully see you all in the next video.